Hello everyone, welcome to our world today, the Unit's perspective. And today we are going to talk about interesting subjects. And the first one is about interspecies communication. So, Sage, have you ever dreamed about talking with your pets or something like that?
Actually, no, I never have.
Okay.
Have you?
Um, I don't think so, but I think many people did. Wish they could talk with them, understand them better. I guess I didn't feel like I needed to have like human conversations in order to have my pets understand me, but it might soon be possible because in the seas of Alaska, a science team basically you know built a whale call with the help of AI and put it into the water. And to their big surprise, a whale came and had a 20 minutes conversation, stayed by the boat, had a 20-minute conversation with the AI for basically 20 minutes. And we don't necessarily understand what was said, but basically he responded to the call that is kind of a hello and then responded to all of the things um, that went after for 20 minutes. And I think it's a big, you know, technology advancement that we got to talk about. And I think it's one of those things where, we always say that everything is good in good measure. Like social media is good in good measure. AI is good in good measure. And I think this is like this type of things kind of help us understand how big AI can be for us, especially considering that it can not only be a tool for communication, for interspecies communication on Earth, but they're considering having this as well with um, extraterrestrial communication. So, yeah, how do you guys feel about just, having this? Like, we have Grenville here as well, even though, like, his camera is a little bit of a technological problem, so we'll only hear his voice today. But yeah, Isaiah, Isaiah Sage, Sage, Grenville, how do you feel about this? Who would like to start? You're muted, Sage. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, it's really cool. It's so interesting. I'm really curious how exactly they did that, because
Mm.
like, but yeah, it's very interesting but I feel like that will help translate a lot of like what animals are feeling, and thinking to people, and that we can learn a lot from that. And yeah, the possibilities for communication with life, outside of Earth is really cool too. And yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. And yeah, I just feel like it's a really cool advancement. It feels like really broadening our connection to, the rest of life. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you asked how they did that. First of all, I wanted to say that this is the team of Dr. Brenda McCowan um, from the University of California, Davis, um, if I'm saying this well. And basically, they used advanced underwater microphones, artificial intelligence, help them have a pattern recognition in the pre-recorded humpback contact that they had from former research. And information theory and machine learning are part of it as well, even though like it's still in development. And these tools can be used for all languages, so they can be used for math. They've been used for music recently, because like in California, robot cellist perform with a symphony orchestra as well, and I think it's cool. Um, it's like basically the article, you know, presented it as social intelligence and bridging the gaps of communication. I think this is it. Like, this is like the ethical type of stuff I want to see, like bridging communication gaps. We all want that, especially now, in these times where it feels like people are not necessarily communicating, um, and it feels like humanity has a lot to learn about relationships. And I think a relationship with life and interspecies relationship can also be of great help in understanding ourselves. But that would be just my opinion. How would you guys feel about that? Granville, do you have any?
Yeah, so it's
Mhm.
it's very interesting. Like on a level, it feels good and it feels a little bit like anxiety provoking. Like I'm not sure what that anxiety provoking thing is. And like,
Mm.
you know, if I just feel into it, I suppose it's that kind of almost feeling like being on the fence of can it be a good thing? Can it be a bad thing? What are the ramifications? Like the expansion of communication, as both of you said, is quite a good thing, and lessons in improving communication and the forms of communication is probably quite good. But then you also have the caveat of how does it start to almost diminish the person's role in the process through kind of machines taking over certain components? So it's kind of that perception of is there a potential threat here? What is that potential threat and what does it say for us in our future? How does that evolve us? So, like, evolution is great, right? But evolution sometimes at the cost of people is not always that great. So, there's definitely a balance. And I suppose I'm kind of mimicking a part of the opinion out there because people are starting to feel threatened by technological advancements in terms of replacing their function in certain processes.
Right. Yeah. I think, as I said in the beginning, like, there is good and bad from everything. Like, there is good from social media and bad from social media. We use social media for our life purpose, so we wouldn't say it's necessarily bad because it puts us on the job. But there is also like a very bad use of social media that doesn't help with relationship and communication at all. And I think AI as well, like there are a lot of ethical things that are questionable about AI. But I think in this instance, if the machine learning can help you gain 200 years of trying to synthesize the pattern of the humpback communication by yourself, by hand, manually, I think this could be a very good thing. And it's like, it's probably good to bring that up because a lot of people feel threatened by that. But I think the key of our truth and our peace and our evolution basically comes from finding balance in everything. Nothing is really bad, just you need balance in it. But that's my opinion. How do you guys feel about that?
Yes, I like that because also remember the article around how we progress by leaps and bounds every 20 years. So kind of like this exponential, it's almost like an exponential explosion of growth. But in that exponential explosion of growth, there's also the point at which we learn through repetition. We learn through experiencing things. So there is a little bit of a sense of bypassing the human learning experience, right? Because technology is being incorporated into those spaces that we learn. And for us, learning is the process of testing, operating, testing, repeating, iterating all the time. That's how we learn. So when that process is sped up, it could be anxiety provoking.
For sure. Yeah. I think you need a lot of support for the energy you expend. It's like kind of like, our community grows rapidly, it expands a lot. And so you need kind of a lot of energy and compassion, and rapid pace of change, spiritually at least, in order to sustain that. And I think what we need to, it reminds me of another thing that we discussed, which is basically the bugs and shutdowns from technology that we experienced at the beginning of the school year. Was it August? July, September? I don't remember. Basically, when Microsoft
Hmm.
was just like, and as our community needs a lot of spiritual support in order to sustain the growth, I think we just need to learn enormous material or technological support in order to sustain the growth of AI in a non-anxiety inducing way. And I do think that we'll have to do this very soon and explain why later. But any last thing you guys want to add to that story?
Um, yeah, it's interesting. So basically, with this AI being able to um, use pattern recognition to kind of like decode whale songs, basically their communication much quicker, right? Than we could have done it, right? Without AI and stuff like that. Um, yeah, no, I feel like that's a good thing. And the thing about it is, I guess if you were a scientist who specialized in, you could say that you would be like, it reduces the amount of work that you can do or that you need to do on it. But I think that that's okay because it's like now you can think even bigger, you can advance faster, you can move on to other things, you know? And so ideally that's what technology does is it's like, oh my God, now that we're freed up from having to do this and spending our time with this thing, we can do these other things and move on, you know, and it's greater support to build off of. Yeah, I don't really get it didn't really trigger any anxiety in me hearing about this particular thing, because it's a very niche thing, you know, studying whale communication. But I think sometimes people feel that about if AI can or automated things can take over other jobs that a lot of people do. But that's more of just like, you know, compassionately transitioning society and helping people learn new skills, move on to better things, you know. But that's what I felt from that. And it's cool, and I think it's fun, and people might see it as kind of random, but the applications of it are huge, right? And you never know where it can lead you. So that's what
Yeah,
I
they
felt.
are. For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
You touched on,
experiencing scientific advancement on rats or rocks, and people don't necessarily understand why, but then it
Yeah.
makes like science um, make a jump forward, and it's pretty cool.
yeah,
And
and like, those leaps and bounds of growth is our natural condition is to learn. And when you're in a learning state psychologically, there is no real sense of a threat because you are open to receiving. So there's a very profound spiritual truth to learning. And so if we're learning at a faster pace, we're growing at a faster pace, which means what specifically to what Sage was speaking to the almost that ascension of the human condition is sped up. And so, that there is the argument to be made that if we surrender to a powerful learning process, we're also surrendering to a powerful growth process.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to put your observations, Granville, in the context of another topic. Because you said that there is an enormous amount of support that you need in order to have a non-anxiety driven growth, especially in AI, just because people are scared about it. And it makes me think about another technological advancement that we need to have that is linked to like the shutdowns, the IT shutdowns that you experienced last trimester. And it's the fact that we kind of are in a cyber attack kind of conflict around the world, war even, according to geopolitics experts. And it's the fact that any hostile country and actors, but mostly like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, are basically threatening every day to have cyber attacks that could be successful in other countries. And I think you researched that topic. So can you tell us kind of like the solution that experts are discussing here to bring us that support that we need in order to feel protected and stable in this space?
So I would be lying if I said to you that I could tell you just offhand because there was so much information to absorb. And I think that was the key thing for me, that defense, that the requirement for defense is shifting because there's advancement. And we saw that with this article around defense strategies. We saw that with the article around outer space satellites and stuff like that that could start to target other weapon systems through their communication systems and things like that. We've seen it through the articles around the fights for owning significant components of the semiconductor market, uh, because microchips just literally run just about everything other than humans. And even that is starting to be part of advancements in the medical field in terms of pacemakers and those kind of things. So the ramifications, if we choose to get nervous, are significant. But if we also choose to accept that the advancements could improve the quality of life of people, but it could also improve the quality of how we start to build defensive networks. So early warning networks and those kind of things. There's a lot of applications that we as humanity kind of need to track, and not from a nervousness point of view, but from an educational point of view, so that we are much more capable of perceiving not only the threats, but the actual good in all of these applications. So I know I'm swinging it a little bit from the actual content of the article, but I'm just starting to see all these patterns kind of connecting and forming a whole nother net of information that we can kind of get people considering so
Yeah.
that we allow them to release that energy of anxiety and and engage in their relationship with life and technology and society because it's shifting and it's shifting because of technological advancements.
Yeah. I didn't feel like you deviated that much from the article. I think you made it comprehensible for everybody. I think that's why we're here as unionists, and that was super good. Like, I don't feel like I have anything to add to it. It felt really like a solid truth of how to see the situation from a peaceful way, or like a learning point of view. Sage, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah. Okay. I guess in terms of like the cyber attacks like becoming an increasing part of warfare today and the like part of like hybrid warfare, different avenues. I feel like even though it should not be something to add to your list of things to worry about. In fact, your list of things to worry about you should always be trying to get rid of those and not worry. But how the media is, they like to give you things. But from our perspective as a unionist, you see instead of like being like, oh, there's challenge and it's getting in my way, it's giving me something, right? So it's giving us like greater cybersecurity, it's advancing computation, and computer science and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's not a super easy way. Well, I guess it depends on the person, but it may not feel like a super fun or easy way to be motivated to increase your cybersecurity and your computer science knowledge as a country or as humanity, but you know, it's the way that one of the ways that it's happening. And so that's okay. And yeah, and it really opens us up to thinking more holistically about things and like instead of being like it requires you to always think about that, right? Like think about cybersecurity, like how's this going to be secure? Do we have backups for this? Like if something goes wrong, what do we do? Which is something that we saw with the Microsoft outage, right? Like
Mhm.
you've got to think about that. Like, if this goes out, what do we do here? So that's a and that's a good thing to be doing that and to be growing in that way. So I guess I feel like that would be the unionist perspective on it. Like, look at it for what it's giving you, not for like, oh, another thing to worry about. Oh no, I don't know. So,
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, and I think something that we also need to probably touch on is the skills that brought us to this point are shifting. And we need to start considering and probably even gearing growing children to understanding that the skills of the future are going to be different. The requirement of this for the skills of the future are going to be different. And while I'm not advocating for living in the future, I am advocating for laying the paving. You kind of need to understand that the landscape is changing. And so, where you would have potentially in the past needed to take a sledgehammer to something, you could probably unmake it in a much less destructive way through a shift in your view of what future skills are versus traditional skills. And that shift also gears people to not living in anxiety, but almost living in creatively understanding what the future may hold and preparing for that future.
Mhm. I think it's so funny that our first two things are about like technology and AI, but they get us more information about how to communicate with each other and what lessons we can have for humanity as ever. And I think this is really the lesson here, to interact with the new ways of the world in a non-scary, non-threatening way. And it is also funny because I saw an ad for um, that calmly explained to me that there was a possibility that the rivers could provoke inundations in the several times in the next 10 years in my region. And it told me that you don't have to worry about it because the level of its growing is slower than most rivers in the world. And so you have time to collect your belongings and get it out of there, basically. And on the other side of that, like Sweden, every citizen's received a flyer without explanation saying what to do um, in in times of war if there is a war threat without explanation. And so I think both had the intention of informing citizens, but one was peaceful and one was very anxiety inducing. And it feels like the lessons that we're learning right now is um, we have these types of crises. We won't be done with them right now. Here's how we need to do it. And it's good because the more we have these conversations, the more we can counteract this kind of numbing out and trying to avoid the fact that this is here anyway, and also not not scaring people into polarizing them or putting them into danger even more than what we did. Um, I think this is very reassuring to have these types of conversation. This means that in some way, a part of the consciousness is really getting somewhere here.
Yeah, and I think that you've touched on something quite important, that that part of consciousness that's been calling for stability is also calling for healthy change. But in order for healthy change to happen, we have to embrace the quality of adaptability. We have to embrace the quality of being open to the new. Because I think for me, the thing that mostly scares me about people that are very entrenched in their ways is that line of we've always done things this way. And then it begs the question of, well, how well has that actually worked? You know? So, yes, we've always done things this way, but could there have been a better way? And had we adopted the better way, where could we have been? And it's all conjecture, right? But it's still an important question to ask.
I think the goal is to have them into a discussion, really. It's kind of like when you're doing sales. Sometimes people don't want to hear about it, but most of it don't want to hear about it because they feel like they're going to get scammed or they don't really want to talk about money. But like if you really talk about what your service is providing, if you talk about why you believe in what you do, the value of what you're having, the importance of having these discussions anyway, like hey, you have been doing this, probably going to continue to do this if you say no to me. The question is like, how does that work for you? And no offense, but what have you been doing that's been, provoking a change? And not even really caring that they're going to agree with you or not, but at least getting them into a conversation. And I think that's why, since the beginning of this year, people, I say this as if we were like mid-year, but we're at the end of the year. Um, temporary distortions. But I think this is what we failed to do most of the year. And when I say we, in terms of politics, with like the hundreds or whatever however much elections we had, is really getting people into discussions instead of getting people into oppositions. But I digress. If we start with that, I think it's a whole other story. But it's good that this is a lesson that is getting out from science right now, and also war. But yeah, it's I guess it's nice lessons for sure. Right. Good. So shall we move on? There's another interesting topic that is definitely sparking a discussion, and that is what people believe is the right salary in order to feel successful and financially stable. And that's something that Sage researched. And interestingly enough, maybe not surprisingly for me, but Gen Z consider that these salaries must be above 500K a year, maybe even more close to 600 for some of them. And Sage is going to explain why to us, maybe. We're just putting a summary of research I've done, and then we can discuss it.
Yeah. Yeah, so this it's interesting, isn't it? There was a survey conducted, and this is one survey, so don't take it as like the truth, but it's potentially accurate. So, yeah, I was talking to people from different generations, like Gen Z, the millennials. I don't know if Gen X was included in there, and they often say that they're not included. And then the boomers, and yeah, like in this time, like, yeah, what amount of like what yearly income do you need in order to be considered financially successful? And I guess for that, it's meaning to be able to afford a home, to be able to afford a car, to be to, you know, yeah, just do the things that people want to do, in their lives. And that would be, I guess, for the purposes of this survey, what they would consider to be financially successful. Okay. And yeah, the the Gen Z figure, apparently the average that they said was $587,000 a year to be able to, meet that level of success that they wanted ideally. Right. And it was interesting because that was so much higher than any of the other ones. The millennial one was like 170 or 180,000 a year. The baby boomer one was like 90 something thousand dollars a year. So definitely way um very different. And it's probably honestly based more on like how things were in the past and stuff like that. Because there's inflation over time, and each individual dollar is worth less as there are more and more and more, dollars in circulation. So that's gonna happen and everything like that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And also in that same survey, they found 71% respondents said that they were confident that they could meet that they could make that $587,000 or more per year, which is also it's interesting because it's like depending on what you read, sometimes you're like, oh, the younger generations are really discouraged by how things are right now, economically in society. And then you'll get another survey that somehow says they're actually very optimistic. And so I don't even know what to make of that. I think that if they are that optimistic, oh, that is great. And yeah, if you're creative and if you're following what you really love to do, especially, then yeah, you achieve all of your goals. But yeah, I just wanted to know, like, what do you guys think of that? What do you feel about all this? What is it telling us about our society and our relationship with work and money and life and that one?
Yeah. It's 50K a month. It's not impossible, but it's surprising. Um,
Hmm.
to be able to meet that goal in this economy. but I believe there are jobs that actually make you meet that goal. And what I think, the first thing that I thought was probably like most probably the inflation. There is an economist that does TikToks that actually calculated that with everything that's been going on, any historical taxes that changed, plus the inflation, plus like any level of like credits that you can have at this time, that with lower salaries that the middle class could have today, most of the people from the boomers generation um, could have already bought their houses. And at this time,
Right.
with the salaries that we have, it's for most people, it's almost impossible to make ends meet. It's very difficult. And it's been like that for millennials, and I think it's even worse now. Um, and millennials in their 30s right now. So I think there is a little bit of that to take into account for sure. And then I think there's also the optimism from someone who is like in the middle of millennials and Gen Z. I would surmise that this is something about seeing that people can make money from even passive income or full income sometimes from some social media, from the digital world, and basically it's never been easier to start your business. Um, to maintain it is another thing because this is very like if you're only driven by wealth and getting money for it, it can be hell, basically. That's one of the lessons of life purpose class actually, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. So I can understand how people can be at the same time very discouraged and at the same time very optimistic, even though that's not the same person. And I think it speaks again to that imbalance that we've been talking about. This imbalance into like, okay, like maybe not realizing that this is 50K a month. So what do you need? What do you need to sell, basically, from products or what type of job do you need to have for how long in order to have that kind of salary? Um, and also the other imbalance from like it is hard to find a job in this market for many people that just graduated. Um, and I think there's a little bit of both. And I don't think there's a definite answer, but I think it's entirely comprehensible why people would say that financial success comes from that because really, honestly, I understand. Why?
Yeah,
Any,
I agree. I agree with both of you, and I think for me, from the perspective of being responsible for ensuring that payroll processes happen, it kind of does concern me to see the lower levels of salaries amongst the more general worker type population. And if you look at the cost of a basket of goods, for instance, that is exponentially grown through inflation. The cost of living, the cost of housing, the cost of caring for kids. So I can understand why the estimation of what potential annual remuneration you need could hit that higher number. Because the fact of the matter is, there are quite a few people that unfortunately have to live on being indebted because financially their remuneration doesn't necessarily always meet their financial obligations, their living requirements, so that energy of lack is starting to become just a little bit too much more pervasive than it has been. And then we have to put into context interest rate hikes that have happened consecutively for almost 2 years. And now those interest rate hikes are those hikes are slowly being reduced, but they're not being reduced at the level at which they increase. So potentially the timeline to financial recovery for personal household finances is going to be a slower process. And so just that alone will inflate somebody's sense of what is actually required in order to feel financially successful. You're on mute,
Yeah.
Yuri.
I was just saying thank you for that, for that explanation, Sage.
And like that figure too. So, in 2022, at least, the average house price in the United States was $433,000. And so if somebody is saying to be financially successful, I want to make 537,000 or I'm sorry, $587,000 a year. Yeah, that they're saying like I want to make more in a year than it costs on average to buy a house. And it's kind of an interesting because it's just like the average salary nowadays, it would take a little over 6 years to make all the money to make that 433,000 on the average salary now in the US. It would take 6 years. And of course, you don't put all of your salary toward buying a house, right? In every year. And that figure for like, let's say it was a baby boomer in like the 70s, um, it would take them like 4 years, with the average salary to save up the amount of money for the average priced home. And so things are a lot more challenging now because of a lot of factors, including more people, um, than back then, less housing stock, and other things. And it's just like it's tougher right now, but we can't. It's not. I don't know.
Mhm.
Is going to be, but it does pose interesting questions about like how people can generate more value. Because like Granville was saying, like when salaries are stagnating, but the economy is still growing, that shows that apparently it's not the people who are in many of these jobs who are generating a lot more value. It's instead like technological advancements or like basically big advancements by people who've come up with ways to generate more value without, you know, paying people or having more people. So it's like it's like a challenging position we're in right now economically, isn't it? So,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, it might be challenging. It also stems from, I feel there is a lot of lack energy here. Like feeling that
Mhm.
there is lack, there is rarity, there is more people now, and less houses on the market. And there
Mhm.
is like this whole thing from the economy that there's just not enough in all big cities, not enough flats, not enough again and again and again. And actually we see that most of the things that are not enough is just that there are a lot of empty flats, empty houses, a lot of people who detain most of the wealth. And I think I can understand why people would like to redistribute it. I just feel like instead of distributing it, because like it won't necessarily change anything from a lack mentality. It's really like helping people learn about real value, real abundance, real money flow. Um, and yeah, I think it's to be honest, for our next few generations, I think it should be something that we really work towards having in the education system, like financial literacy would solve so many other problems that we discussed in just under an hour right now. Um, and yeah, I just think it's important. And actually, most of the things that we've discussed for this half of the year could be solved with financial literacy. Um, Talk about demographics, for example, and other things like that. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see. There is a lot of learning that we must put in place for ourselves and that governments must put in place for us right now so that we can actually lean toward having peaceful growth in all of the topics that we debated. So I think it would be interesting to see how this goes. And we're already at time. So does anyone have any last few words to say? No?
No.
Okay, cool. So thank you to everyone who's watched this discussion live or the replay on YouTube. If you enjoy this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment and share so we can do more of those. And we have big surprise coming up for you. Big surprises coming up for you in 2025. So stay tuned. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.